Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Paramahansa Purudikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purudikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Can we leave just a foot open because there are some people out there who tends to get a little noisy? Thank you. I think we'll be fine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're going to repeat 46. Several of you weren't here anyway. Okay. On this 7th day of October, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, text 46, page 113. Yavan Arta Udapani Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan Arta Udapani Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan Arta Udapani Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan Arta Udapani Sarvatak Samplutodake Ravan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan Arta Udapane Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan Arta Udapane Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha. Ed? Yavan Arta Udapane Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Tavan Vijanataha. Yavan, all that, Artaha, is meant, Udapane, in a well of water, Sarvataha, in all respects, Sampluta Udake, in a great reservoir of water. Tavan, similarly, Sarveshu, in all Vedeshu, Vedic literatures, Brahmanasya, of the man who knows the Supreme Brahman, Vijanataha, who is in complete knowledge. Translation. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karmakanda division of the Vedic literature are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15:15. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15:7. The living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam 333.7 as follows. 3rd canto, 33rd chapter, 7th verse as follows. I'll say, you say. Oho bata shapachoto gariyan Yad jigvagre vartate namatubhyam Te pustapaste juhuvusasnaraya Brahmanucho namagunanti yete. So this is Devahuti speaking to her son Kapiladev, who's teaching her all about yoga. Oh my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of a Chandala or dog-eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. You're on the right page? Okay. So, one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only. And one must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals. Nor is it possible to study all of the Vedanta and the Upanishads thoroughly. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resources to execute the purposes of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of all fallen souls. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Prakashananda Saraswati, Why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying Vedanta philosophy. The Lord replied that his spiritual master had found him to be a great fool, and thus asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so, and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna. And the highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Krishna has begun his teaching here on Buddhi Yoga, which is Bhakti Yoga. But the emphasis is on the use of the intelligence, and how the intelligence is the key element. So, in the previous verse, Krishna has encouraged Arjuna to be transcendental to the modes of nature. He said something that's kind of brings you up a little bit. Wow, is that really true? Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistrigunya Bhavardhana. The Vedas deal mostly with the three modes of nature. And then he says, be transcendental to those modes. So that means that Arjuna should not be arguing on the basis of the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. That it'd be very dangerous for him to fight this battle, because he's going to kill all the men and the women will be unprotected, and there'll be irreligion in society, and so I'll be committing sin, and there won't be the Shraddha ceremony won't be performed. But this is all part of his argument in the first chapter on the basis of the Vedas. But here Krishna is saying, don't get hung up on that portion of the Vedas. You remember that, you may remember a few verses back, where he said, Yamimam pushpitam bacham pravadanti chapashita, that those who are not intelligent, avipaschitaha, they say, let's catch it right here, 42 and 43, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. That includes the Karma Kanda, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification in opulent life, they say there's nothing more than this. In other words, these are the false so-called knowers of the Vedas. There's a phrase here that's kind of idiomatic in Sanskrit. This word Vedavada Rata, if you look on text 42, second line, Vedavada Rata, that Rata, it comes up twice in the Ishopanishad also. The so-called supreme absolute truth. If someone they're worshipping what they claim to be absolute, but it's not. It's the impersonal, or it's even some powerful demigod. And so here, the so-called knowers of the Vedas say that the Karma Kanda section is the main section, and that's what we really have to concentrate on. But that's just material. It may be some refined material aspiration, but if you get hung up on that, then you fail to see the actual goal of the Vedas, which we read about today. And that one has to know the purpose behind them, the ultimate purpose of the Vedic literature. And that is to know Krishna. That Prabhupada refers twice to the 15th chapter here. He doesn't give the Sanskrit. Vedaischa sarvar ahameva vedya. Krishna says, Vedaischa, all the Vedas, the purpose of all the Vedas, I am to be known. If you're reading the Vedas and you're not getting closer to understand Krishna, you're misreading the Vedas. You're not misunderstanding the purpose of the Vedas. And that's can be, fatal to your spiritual life. You get into I remember once, this was way back when I was first getting interested in yoga, and I read one book that said the Bhagavad Gita on it, but it only went to the 6th chapter. They said this is the final. This is the yoga chapter. This is what we're looking for. That's all they printed. A gross distortion of of what the chapters are. I mean, you read that chapter, and Arjuna says, "I can't follow this," and so that the Krishna says, "Oh, okay." At the end, he says, "Well, even if you fail, you can next life you'll be born again." But really, the key is yogi nama bisarvesham madgatena antaratmana, that the ultimate yogi is one who's always thinking of me, meditate with great faith and devotion, the bhakti yogi. Well, how do we be a bhakti yogi? Okay, next chapter starts, Maya Sakta Manaparta. Now I'll teach you how your mind can be attached to me. The Prabhupada said, the middle 6 chapters, beginning with 7, are the essence of the whole Gita. So it was a complete misrepresentation. So even in Krishna's day, he's saying there are many who are foolish, avipaschata, and they're, get into the flowery words of the Vedas describing Nandana garden and all the things you can get by it. So don't be fooled by that. So then the verse we read today, if you understand the true meaning of the Vedas, the purpose of the Vedas, to know Krishna, then everything falls into place. Then you'll know what to do and what not to do. And right away in the purport, as Prabhupada often does, he brings it all home to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Now this verse is a very important verse for us. It's about us. Maybe not about you, Prabhu. But about me. And the rest. You also, So aho bata. What Devahudi is expressing here is her amazement. This word aho. Oh, amazing it is. Aho bata. Shopacha. Even the lowest of the society, the dog eaters. I always wondered about that. It says, aren't cow eaters lower? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it's even if one is a dog eater, how glorious they are if on the tip of their tongue your name is being chanted. In other words, they may not be fully realized in this holy name, but they're chanting, and it's not seen, it's not obvious, but they've eliminated lifetimes of karma. Just like I always think when we go around Tulsi, there's actually 2 parts to that Tulsi prayer, distinct parts. The part which is the main part is the song, where you're praying to, I want to love Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. Radha Krishna Seva Pava E Abhilasi. This is my most ardent desire, to serve Radha and Krishna. And one who takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. And my wish is that I want to be a resident of Vrindavan, and I want to always see the beautiful passage. It's the highest prayer that there is, basically. It's higher than going to Vaikuntha. It's certainly higher than an aspiration for liberation. And so then that song concludes, right? And then we go around, water Tulsi. But just going around, Yani kani papani brahmahatya kani cha, that you get free from all your karmic reactions, even to the point of killing the Brahman. That's a whole different mood. So Prabhupada gave both of them, both of us. They're wonderful. But the idea is that the Bhagavatam focuses on this aspect, cutting through the stratification of society according to Varna and Ashram. There's plenty about Varna and Ashram, but you learn right at the beginning that the essence of Varna Ashram is pleasing Hari. And if you're not part of, you weren't born in a Brahmin family or trained as a Brahmin, that's okay. You can still chant. What is that second verse? And nam namakari bahudani tatra niyamatak smaranena kala. There's no restriction as to time, place, person for chanting your holy name. It's all, the holy name is most merciful incarnation of Krishna. And it's a complete process. You zip past all of these Brahmins steeped in all the mantras and the sacrifices and everything, what they call the smarta Brahmins. Too much attention to the smriti regulations, losing the touch or the sight of the actual goal. So much of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is Lord Chaitanya. He meets Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma was also an impersonalist, very learned. He was in better shape than Prakashananda at first because he had great affection for Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya comes into the temple, right, and immediately faints in ecstasy. He doesn't see a wooden statue. He sees his beloved Krishna with the flute, when he sees Jagannath. He faints, and what happens is that the guards, they're used to seeing. Did you want to turn this off?
No, I thought the microphone was
Oh. me working. I mean, it could be higher, but we don't want to wake Vijay up. So what happens there? You know, his Sarvabhauma is so learned. I mean, he was a tremendous scholar. You know, Puri, you can imagine there were so many scholars, but he was a scholar of scholars in charge of the temple. So the guards say, "Oh, this is another one of these fakers who's come," and fainted. They're about to beat him, and Sarvabhauma says, "Oh, wait, no, because he's very impressive, so effulgent, So he looks, he looks like he's in samadhi, but he wants to make sure that he's not dead. So he takes the little cotton and he puts it by his nose, and there's a slight movement there. This is traditional. So he says he's very concerned, this sannyasi, very young sannyasi. He has him carefully brought to his home, and then finally his Lord Chaitanya's travelers, companions catch up. Lord Nityananda was amongst them, Mukunda, I think Gadadhar was it. And they finally arrive, and they heard the rumors that there was this very impressive sannyasi arrived. Oh, that's Lord Chaitanya. And they go to Sarvabhauma's house, and they start chanting the holy name in his ear, and eventually he wakes up, But then Sarvabhauma, he was concerned. First of all, there's different classes of Mayavadi sannyasis, and Lord Chaitanya had not been initiated in what is considered the highest class. So Sarvabhauma said, "Well, I'll help you get into the higher class. Just study Vedanta. Why don't you study?" And this comes up. I think in Prakashananda was the story, is that Lord Chaitanya supposedly hadn't studied Vedanta, so thoroughly. So Sarvabhauma said, "Well, okay, I'll teach you." So for 7 days, there's a painting. You've seen the painting. Lord Chaitanya is looking. He's just looking, and Sarvabhauma is teaching. And Lord Chaitanya doesn't say anything. So finally, Sarvabhauma says, "Are you understanding? You're not asking any questions." So Lord just says, "Yeah, I understand the meaning of the sutras very well, but your explanation is covering them like clouds are covering the sun." So Sarvabhauma said, "Okay, well, what's your explanation?" And then Lord Chaitanya starts speaking, and whoa, he completely blows him away, turns him into a bhakta. And on the spot, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he composed 100 verses. Can you imagine? We can hardly remember one verse after 100 days. So he's writing 100 verses just on the spot. And so that's the mood of this verse. Ahobata Shabado. Just on the tip of the tongue, somehow they're chanting. They must have performed all kinds of austerities in their past life, sacrifices, bathed in all the holy places, studied the Vedas, Brahmanuchara, for just to be chanting the holy name. Now that's not this meant at all. The holy name is kind of dancing on my tongue also, tip of my tongue. I must be great Brahman, I must have studied. That's not the mood to receive this. But the idea is that, as Prabhupada says so wonderfully at the end here, the greatest Vedantist is someone who takes pleasure in chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the holy name. Because the holy name is Krishna. It's like the goal already. We're already given the goal. Now we just have to become qualified to appreciate it. And we've been given so many ways of doing that. So the Bhagavad Gita, especially as given by Srila Prabhupada and explained, is also cutting through all what the unnecessary things, just as the Bhagavatam does. We're not going to go and study all the Upanishads, nor do we need to. We don't have to become familiar with all the other 18, 17 main Puranas, whatever it is. And we certainly don't have to, make a detailed study of Vedanta Sutra. It's already been given for us. We're after the essence. Time is of the essence. Who knows how many hours and minutes and days and months and years we have left in this body. This whole society seems to be crumbling and falling apart as we sit here. So what we need is a process that'll work now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. To just take shelter of that holy name, everything is there. The love of God, the liberation, our ability to tolerate all of the, threefold miseries, everything. So that's what's going on here. And Krishna will now speak. Of course, he's weaving in a lot of encouragement for Arjuna to do his duty, and that'll be his perfection. But he's going to talk a lot about how it's necessary to be non-fruitive in one's activities, and to just act for the sake of duty or act for the sake of devotion, and not covet the fruits. That's what keeps us bound to this world. So he's going to speak about that. But this, I always found this section very enlivening and enlightening. All right, let's go on, if there's no comments or questions. Text 47. Karmanyevadikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahetu abur ma te sangostra karmani. A lot of ma's here. That means don't. No, don't do this. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Purport. There are three considerations here: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Prescribed duties are activities enjoined in terms of one's acquired modes of material nature. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of the action. Thus he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. As far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Routine work performed as an obligation. Alex, we can get that now. Okay, thank you. Routine work performed as an obligation in terms of the scriptural injunctions, without desire for results, is action in the mode of goodness. Work with results becomes the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but should act without attachment to the result. Such disinterested, obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to the path of liberation. Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty without attachment to the result. His non-participation in the battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is cause for bondage. Inaction is sinful. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna. So I always, remarked at this verse because it's very scientifically presented. Karma nirvedikadaste. You have a right to perform your duty. Okay, but you're not allowed to enjoy the fruit. Well, then why should I work? Maybe I'll give up. No, can't. Don't. You're not attached to the fruit, and don't be attached to not doing your duty. So Krishna covers it from every angle. If you're actually going to follow his words. So how does this pertain to us? Well, we accept duties in Krishna consciousness, but we have an overall perspective of what we're aiming for, and it's not liberation. That may be part of it, part of our motivation. But we know that our motivation should mature into doing it to please Krishna. Because, why? Because we know that will bring us the greatest pleasure. So there's two things going on. One is that we're acting because we want to get out of the entanglement of birth and death, karma. So there is that impetus of liberation, even though we know it's not the ultimate impetus. It's a serious thing. Who wants to come back to this world? I mean, think about it. Even if you're young, we'll be young again, but in what's the circumstances? So that's a very serious part. So therefore, we can't be attached to the fruit. That makes sense, right? But how are we going to live? Okay, well, as Ishopanada says, you're entitled to your quota for living, and there's a certain way of doing it where you can stay Krishna conscious, and you'll still be liberated. But you can't just desire the fruit for your own sense gratification. Then you get bound up. So ma paleshu kadashana. Then ma palahetur. Okay, so at least can I just, if I want to work in this world and accomplish something, can I take credit for it? No. Can't do that either. Then you're thinking, I'm the doer. I did it. It's my accomplishment, right? That's a subtle form of attachment. Krishna is doing instructing this for our own good here. It's not that he wants to exploit Arjun's labor, to win the battle. He's doing it for Arjun's benefit, that he should fight this battle. For him, for the sake of the higher purpose of pleasing Krishna, ultimately, which is to everyone's benefit. And so the materialist says, okay, well look, if you don't want me to enjoy the fruit and I can't even take credit, I'm not going to work. He says, no. Mate sangos, don't be attached to not doing your duty. So it only works in the context of bhakti. One can actually be inspired to work if there's this higher goal that you're working toward. And you can feel some of that goal, attaining that goal, even in the process of just doing your duties. Because as you're doing your duties, you're chanting Hare Krishna. That's the thing. It's not just, all right, I'm doing my duty, and it's selfless, I'm not attached to the goal, and I'm not taking credit. No. You're remembering Krishna, and you're chanting Krishna's name, and that makes it all possible. That makes it all make sense. Because you're certainly not getting attached, there's no fruit, so to speak, and no honor, so to speak, materially. But there is a sense of lightness, a sense of you're loosening the bonds to the material world, and you're tightening the bonds to Krishna. This is the Vairagya principle. Anasakta sivishayanyata hamapayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagam uchite. This is in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Because Vairagya is a very important element of this whole thing. What's keeping us bound here? The raga, the attachment to this world. So, when Krishna's Kaviraj, no, I'm sorry, it was the same Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. One of the verses he composed after he became such a great devotee, he composed it about Lord Chaitanya and sent it to the Gambhir where he was staying near the temple on a palm leaf. And Lord Chaitanya's servant, Govinda, he saw it, he got it first, and he very, very wisely didn't give it to Lord Chaitanya before he wrote it on the outside of the Gambhir. Because he knew when Lord Chaitanya saw it, he would rip it up. And he did, because it glorifies him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But this is a very famous verse. It says, Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga. The reason I'm quoting because it emphasizes Vairagya. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga shikshata meka purushak purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya sharira dhari kripamudya yastamaham papajye. So what does it say there? He says, the same ancient person, Krishna, has now appeared. So he had this revelation. Lord Chaitanya revealed himself. I think the 6-arm form, special 6-arm form. He got 2 arms with the bow and arrow of Ram, and 2 arms with Krishna playing the flute, and 2 arms with Lord Chaitanya carrying the kamandalu and I think the danda at that time he had. So, revealing that he was Krishna, he's the same Ram, the same Krishna. So that's what this verse is about. The same ancient person, Krishna, has come to teach a devotional service to himself, characterized by detachment and knowledge. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga, his own bhakti yoga. Shikshartam, for the purpose, artha, of teaching, shiksha. Purushak Purana, the same ancient persons. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari, he has assumed the form, Sharira, of Shri Krishna Chaitanya, but it's the same Krishna. Sharira Dhari, Kripam Mudya, he's an ocean of mercy, I take full shelter of him. It's worth memorizing this one. So how can you stay detached, from matter, or progressively become detached from matter and become attached to Krishna? That's the principle of yukta vairagya, of detachment in yoga. So he says, anasaktasya vishayan, not cultivating attachment for the vishayas themselves, the objects of the senses. Anasaktasya vishayan. Asakta means attachment, anasakta means no attachment. Yataham upayunjata, and as appropriate, using them in the service of Krishna. Then that means money, it can be used. That's a big form of attachment. But when the money comes and you use it in Krishna's service, that's the perfect use. Prabhupada showed that perfectly. He had no money. You see his diary. His diary has been preserved. Expenditures. 15 cents for the bus. I bought some salt. He's keeping perfect track, every penny, because it's Krishna's money, And then a few years later, thousands and thousands of dollars to print books and to buy this temple. And all right, I was there in New York. There's a whole collection process. I didn't know about it when I joined, but they had these young ladies who had joined, and they were powerful collectors. I mean, you get some, poor, brahmachari comes in, searcher, and I think they told him if he has a job, then you preach to him. Anyway, so I gave my whole life savings, which is about $1,500, which is about 5 times what it is today. And shortly after I joined, once you give what you're most attached to, then you follow it. But I didn't know they were collecting for a new temple in New York, which they eventually got. They had this place in Brooklyn, but it was too small. They had all these devotees packed in there, and they needed a new place, so they're collecting. So I learned much later they had collected a few $100,000, which they started to look for a new place. Of course, to buy in Manhattan, even in those days, you needed more than that. But then they got a letter from Prabhupada, or a call, or a telegram. Okay, send all the money to India. We're going to buy the land in Bombay or something. You know what I mean? For his project. So they very happily did that and just kept, started a new collection. In other words, they weren't attached to the money for themselves. They were attached because it was pleasing to Prabhupada. If Prabhupada wanted to spend it in India, fine. This is how India developed in those days. Then later on, much more recently, India bailed out America, which had went through some big lawsuit. This was in the 90s, and India had been, prospered tremendously, and they gave millions of dollars to help us, win that lawsuit or fight the lawsuit, pay off. Anyway, so this is the principle of detachment in yoga by using whatever's available, including our own facility, our own intelligence, musical ability, whatever we have. Yatahamupi nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. So you're not bound up to the object of the senses, but you're becoming bound up to Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairangam uchate. Now, it's always contrasted with the so-called detachment of the impersonalists, because that's their whole thing, that they're breaking the ties to this world, and so they're going to merge into Brahman, free of attachments. But their detachment is very weak. It's called Palgu Vairagya. Palgu means very superficial. So the example is Prapanchikataya Praja Hadisambandhi Vastunak Mumukshubi Parityago Vairagyam Palgu Kachite. So here you get the contrast between Tyaga and Vairagya. It's important to understand. In the 18th chapter, the Tyaga principle is mentioned a lot. So Tyagali means to literally give something up. We practice that. That's what the 4 regs are about. There's no way of dovetailing those things, illicit sex, and so forth. So that you really have to give up. But mostly we're cultivating vairagya, because that's the principle of not this detachment, but using the very things that you're most attached to connect to Krishna, and then you're not attached to the things; you become attached to Krishna. That's the whole idea. So here, prapanchikataya buddhya. Prapanchikata means seeing as material, even those things related to Hari, such as the holy name, the deity, prasadam, the temple, the very things which we know are material energy that has been spiritualized by being engaged in Krishna service. The holy name is not an ordinary sound. To have that mentality is hellish. There's a whole verse about that. To see the deity as just stone or wood, to see the spiritual master or Vaishnava as an ordinary, spiritual master an ordinary man, or Vaishnavas as belonging to some caste, or and to see the holy name as ordinary sound and the charanamrita as just ordinary water. It's hellish. It's a hellish mentality, literally. So that's what the impersonalists see. They see everything related to Hari as material. Hadisambandhi vastunak means the thing. Hadisambandhi mumukshubi parityaga, because their desire is not love for Krishna, it's just liberation. They want to give up any varieties or anything. It's all material. And so they have no idea of the spiritual body. So we want to cultivate this vairagya. And then this whole thing makes sense. Karmanyavadikaraste. So you're entitled to your duty. You're entitled to a service in Krishna consciousness. That's everyone has a right to serve Krishna. But don't try to covet the fruits of that service. The fruit belongs to Krishna. You know, you're cooking the Raj Bhog. It's not that you cook, and then you eat it. You cook, and then you offer it. Then you can honor the prasadam, and it's a loving exchange, you see. And then, don't consider yourself the doer, right? In other words, what is your service? What is your qualification? You know, whatever you do, even your intelligence, your muscles, you know, what to speak of the ingredients you cook with, or you build with, or whatever it is, your skill in speaking, it's all coming from Krishna. So it's like offering the Ganges into the Ganges. You know, what you bring to the equation is your mood, your sincerity of purpose. You see, and that matures into love of God, which is the real goal. That's the whole prayojana. But as far as the things that you're offering, and your own body, ultimately it falls. So what's left? The mood, your consciousness that you cultivated with the body as a tool. There's a very nice verse which describes this. 87th chapter. This is the prayers of the personified Vedas. Beautiful purport by Gopi Pranadam. One of these nights I'll bring it and read it. Twadanupatang kulaya midamatma sarit priyavach. Chadadita tonmaketuhi de priyatmanicha. Nabadadamandaho sadupasana yatmahano. Yadunushaya brahme urubaye kusharira batak. So you know what ku, the prefix ku in Sanskrit means bad. There's ku dharma, there's ku kata, and there's ku sharira, these bad bodies. So here he's saying the human body is very suited to serving you, my Lord. Yodun kulayam. Kulayam is a word for the body. It's an unusual word. It means that which eventually sinks into the ground is dissolved. You know, it's temporary. Unupatam means very nicely suited to follow your path and to serve you. And when we actually serve Krishna with all our facilities, then the body becomes our best friend. It's your tools for serving the Lord. It's a very good paraphernalia. Just like all of the paraphernalia is worshipable here, right? It's important. The body is your surit, very dear. And on your side, as a super soul, you're happily guiding that person's intelligence inside. So that's a very nice relationship there. But then the third line says, how discouraging and horrible it is if someone doesn't take their pleasure in serving you, but in trying to please the senses of the body. And what happens, this key phrase, asadupasanaya, worshipping the impermanent. That's what's going on everywhere. People are worshipping the impermanent. That's what mammon is all about in the Bible. People are worshipping the money and what money can buy and all of these temporary relationships which are slipping away from them as they enjoy them. You know, that's a tragedy. And then he says, asadupasane atmahano, virtual suicide for the soul. Of course you can't kill the soul, we know that. But you can many millions of years waste, going down from doing that. And so then he says the last line, the destiny, yadunushaya brahma, striving to please the body inside of the body, when gradually sinks down to the kusharira, so many lower species of life, which are full of fear, which give for fear. This is the big choice that we have. To act like animals and simply be concerned with getting and spending, and this is mine, and let me enjoy, and the fearfulness, or to systematically cultivate our relation with Krishna with whatever facility we have, whatever we have. So that's then this whole thing makes sense. Don't covet the fruits, and don't think yourself I'm the doer, and get egoistically. Realize that the facility has been given by Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. I'll repeat it. Don't worry. I'll just repeat it. Go ahead.
So, Prabhu, one of the lines it says, one is who is attached to the result of this work, also the cause of this action.
So the question is on this in the first paragraph of the purport. One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of his action. Cause there means that you're responsible for the result. In other words, if it's a pleasing result, then you get attached to that. If it's you fail, then you feel responsible for that. But when you're the cause of the impetus for the activity is Krishna, then it's entirely up to him. You try the best you can. It may or may not succeed, but you may remain equipoised in all the situations. Prabhupada perfectly illustrated that. So much struggle, in India before he came to America. I mean, just imagine what he went through. He had this whole thing set up with the League of Devotees, the history. And he even made a disciple, and they were preaching all over the place. You read it, he was doing kirtan and everything. And then it was taken away from him. He tried to fight it as much as possible, but it was impossible. The governor's wife wanted the building, He didn't really own the building. Boom, it's all dissolved. He had it going, now it's gone. Trying to, even his plan to become rich and use the money for Krishna, But his business he got robbed, and it just fell through his hands. It dissolved. His family, his wife wouldn't help out. And in fact, you can see that looking back, how this was part of Krishna's plan, and it was kind of fortunate for us that she didn't help. Prabhupada would have become a very nice preacher in India. But no, everything fell through. He had no money. He was sannyasi, poor, and he had nothing. But he had that order, and he had the blessings of the Goswamis. I mean, did you ever read this book by Mula Prakriti? She went and interviewed so many people who knew Prabhupada before he came to America. And it describes once, I forget the details, but he had some darshan with Rupa Goswami. He's sitting there, and he's encouraging him. And once the person in Radha Damodar, who was taking care of the caretaker, he saw Prabhupada dancing ecstatically in the yard and chanting, and he was wearing this exquisite garland, and with a tremendous fragrance, And it turned, Krishna had given him that garland, and Prabhupada, told him. I mean, it was out of season, the flowers you couldn't even. So this is what Prabhupada, he was getting so much encouragement. And so with that, inspiration, he just threw all caution to the winds and got on the boat at 69 and had 2 heart attacks. But he still felt encouraged. And even through all the difficulties afterward, I mean, to run this movement, just to try to run a temple, Yeah. So just to answer his question, so the cause is that if you're just doing Krishna's work, you're not responsible. Therefore, you're not the cause. You're the agent. That's the idea. But when it's your thing, then you're the cause. Yes. Acharya Prabhakar. I don't know the history there, but I'm pretty sure that he helped Prabhupada in the Sanskrit. He was a Sanskrit scholar. And Prabhupada studied Sanskrit like but he didn't really study formally, but knowing that he was going to translate the whole Bhagavatam, I think he may have learned some Sanskrit from him. But I don't know what happened when Prabhupada came to America. We could try to find out. Yeah. No, Mike.
Yeah, so if you're talking about strength, engaging whatever you have in Krishna service.
Yeah.
So if a particular devotee is getting a lot of other senior devotees, specifically certain senior devotees are kind of encouraging in certain ways that, you should do this service, you should do that service.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that particular devotee has some qualification to do that service.
Yeah.
But there's some hesitation on that devotee's part, like, I'm not qualified, or there's some hesitation for whatever reason.
Uh-huh.
So maybe you could comment on that, like idea, like why is there hesitation there, or is that good, is that bad, or what's going on with that?
Well, I think there's no one answer that we can give to that, because this is a life decision that you're making, and really one has to pray to Krishna for the inspiration. Am I really suited for this? is this something that I can get, really embrace fully and take part in? So I would say that it's not a snap decision, and you should probably, consult more than one person who, and really look deep. Do I have do I have the nature for this service? And maybe they can, be like a trial period, I mean, I just, looking back, I was very fortunate that I joined where I did and when I did. If I had joined the New York Temple a year later, or 2 years later, the whole press would have been in L.A., and I would have been getting involved in, that whole scene in Manhattan. So who knows what would happen. But Krishna moved me around in such a way that at a certain timing, and so I got a service that I was very suited to, and so I was well situated. But there's some, there was around a rough patch when I kind of. Anyway, I'll tell you later about it. But the point is, there's a certain core, to our services that don't change. The whole sadhana, the morning program, and that's really our foundation. Whatever particular service you find yourself in, that always has to be, a source of your spiritual strength. So I would consult others and kind of see if there's a way of moving into it, so that you're doing part of the services, and you see if it's really something that you can makes you enlightened. That's what I would do. All right, we got time for a few poems. You ready? Any requests? What is it? From Rishabdev. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. Nayam deho dehabhajanjaloke. The Sanskrit is so powerful. Here's one I learned from an old devotee. I don't know if you were here. Did you meet Mahavishnu Maharaj the elder? No. Never did. Yeah, that was before your time. Very wonderful devotee. He built up I say New Dwarka. He built up the Dwarka temple in India from nothing. He started out with one disciple sitting under a tree and chanting, and gradually, he built it up, and there's a whole temple there now, ISKCON temple. So he taught me this verse. I taught him one, gave him one. This is when he was a brahmachari. He was standing in line in Vrindavan waiting for prasadam. He was quite a bit older than me, but he was still a brahmachari. And I asked him, "Do you want to learn? Would you like to hear a nice verse?" He said, "Oh yeah." He pulls out a pad. No one ever did that before, to take notes. I forget what verse I gave him, but then he gave me this verse, which I memorized, and then No, I think he was writing down the verse. So this is, how's it go? Now, Deheshti mangsurudide bimatam chajasra jaya satari sadama batam vimuncha pashyani sam jagaditam chanabhangatishtam vairagya ragya rasiko bhava bhakti dishta. This is apropos of this discussion of vairagya. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for wife and kids and home. What is it? Yeah, but I forget how I put it, so it scans. Remember that your whole world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. But there's that phrase, vairagya raga, rasika bhava. Become a rasika, being able to taste. And in this way, get a lot of raga for vairagya. Become attached to detachment. I mean, you can see that's a nice concept. To embrace it. It's like Bhagavad Dasa. If it's going to be one level, let me take it to the next level. And then when that happens, let me see if I can take it to the next. He became the acharya for that. He practically ate nothing, and literally, skinny, even more than the others in Goswamis. All right, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.